mana. I mean, if you've been watching Pokemon TCG for pretty much since the start of this last standard rotation, this deck has been at the forefront on and off for the last year.
Yeah, one of the things I love about watching Cyrus play is that they are never scared to branch out. They're someone who's very much known for playing a different deck at almost every single tournament, it feels like. Since that win at NAIC, you know, she took the Chien Pao deck to a 9th place finish at the World Championships. We've seen some Sableye Charizard being played throughout the course of this season from Cyrus, and now it is that Gardevoir. Going up against here, Qing Lee, playing an old favorite, Lost Box Kyogre.
Yeah, this matchup has a very interesting dynamic as we look at the prize cards. Lots of big cards for each player.
Yeah.
You see the Iron Hands EX in the prize cards, Radiant Greninja in the prize cards for Cyrus. See how things develop out. Really, the Iron Hands is a big card against Gardevoir. Doesn't really shiver in the face of many threats in the format, but Iron Hands EX is really that one that if you can sort of get it off super fast before Gardevoir can establish Kirlia's Gardevoir EX into play, that can be a very, very big deal and a big tempo swing in this matchup.
Yeah, definitely a big deal to see it in the prizes. It did look like it was at the bottom of the prize card, so maybe if Qing gets an early Cramorant knockout, we'll see that Iron Hands being grabbed pretty quickly. Qing also does play that one copy of Hisuian Heavy Ball, so that can be fetched out. Cyrus, on the other hand, no Hisuian Heavy Ball in their list, so no opportunity to find the prized Screamtail or that Radiant Greninja. Both of those cards can be really important.
Let's get into it. Round 4 here at the Vancouver Regional Championships. An excellent way to start things out. Cyrus kicking off the action, checking through the deck with that Battle VIP Pass. We're going to be saying that a lot this weekend, but after this, no more Battle Pass. We'll be replacing it with the Buddy Buddy Poffin when that comes out. But
yeah, it's kind of interesting. A lot of times whenever rotation comes, players have to question, okay, you know, this card rotated from the deck I like to play. What do I replace it with? And oftentimes the correct answer is you should just look at the cards available in the format and don't look at like what should be making a replacement for that card in your deck, but what makes your deck better overall. Don't think of it as a one-to-one swap. But in the case of Battle VIP Pass and Buddy Buddy Poffin, it's a pretty easy one-to-one swap for a lot of these archetypes. Gardevoir, Charizard, to name just a couple.
So staring down Comfey in the active spot, Cyrus thinking about how she wants to build this board up. I mean, look, you can be facing down a lot of different Lost Zone decks. Lost Zone Charizard, Lost Zone Giratina, but is there any consistent way you really want to set your board up here on this first turn?
I mean, definitely getting a few Ralts into play. Did look like Cyrus actually has another Battle VIP Pass in hand, so this doesn't look like it has to be a Mirage Step game, most likely. Cyrus didn't prize any of those Kirlias, so a turn 1 double Battle VIP Pass can lead into 2-3 Kirlia on turn 2, which can let you be a little bit more aggressive with your setup. You don't have to end with the Mirage Step. You can end with the Mew active, which honestly can be a little bit better against these Lost Zone decks because losing the Mew, not that big of a deal. It's something that you like to push after a knockout throughout the course of a game, but a little bit better than losing, say, a Kirlia, which is what you lose if you go for Mirage Step.
Yeah, bench space, the big key in this matchup. A Pokemon like Mew is great in the early game, but if your opponent can play things like Escape Rope, pivot around it, it really hogs up a bench spot that could be detrimental later on. So this is going to be the interesting choice. Do we see things like Manaphy come down right away? We see a supporter card in the hand, Avery, so there is a follow-up for the following turn. But this is really just the choice where you sort of start to diverge off paths. I mean, if Cyrus wanted to, could have grabbed Manaphy Ralts and with the Fog Crystal and Ultra Ball had guaranteed Mirage Step the following turn. But no, it will be the second Battle of VIP Pass played. Already putting that Manaphy to the top of the deck. Pretty much 66% sort of out of the archetypes they play away to attack with Radiant Greninja. This is sort of one of the disadvantages of going for Manaphy before you see exactly what your opponent's playing. Now, if they are playing Radiant Charizard, there's no need for the Manaphy, right? It can't deal bench damage, but it is still going to be that choice. I feel like if you're going to look at the percentages, there's a higher chance than not that your opponent's going to have Radiant Greninja in their Lost Zone deck.
Yeah, so Cyrus here did leave the 2 bench spaces open, only grabbed 1 Pokemon off that second Battle VIP Pass, which does leave plenty of opportunity to still go for the turn 2 Mirage Step, especially if Qing is able to get a turn 1 knockout with a Cramorant. Mirage Step is a pretty easy response as well. So I like this play from Cyrus. You leave multiple options open. And if your hand does develop into a situation where you can just put 3 Kirlia into play, you've got 3 Ralts to set that up.
Let's see what Qing can respond with. Playing this Nest Ball, checking through the deck to see what resources will. Be a little bit surprised to see that Iron Hands EX is sitting in the prize cards. But this hand looks solid. Colress's Experiment, plenty of ways to dig through the deck. Already looking at that Cramorant. This is probably your ideal attacker on your first turn going second. That's sort of the advantage this Lost Zone deck has. It can threaten a lot on your second turn going first, or, of course, being able to attack if you are going second in the Pokemon TCG. You're able to play everything from your hand. Supporter cards, energies, attack. A lot more options available for King on this first turn. How will he develop this board out? Now sequencing is a big part of this deck. Tell us why that's so important in this Lost Zone deck when it comes down to these early turns.
Yeah, because every single turn you're having to make difficult decisions. You're having to send cards to the Lost Zone through the use of Comfey's Flower Selecting, through the use of Colress's Experiment, even things like Lost Vacuum, which I believe that King already has in the hand currently. You want to check your prize cards very, very thoroughly so that you can be totally aware of what you have access to, what you don't have access to, so that if you flower selecting into, say, a pair of basic energy cards, you know what is safe for you to get rid of, and you know which ones you need to hang on to.
Look at that shiny Ditto with the transformative start. You can only use it on your first turn, but it's great in this deck that just wants to get Comfey into play as soon as possible. Could even turn it into something like the Cramorant, so sort of a wild card slot here in the deck for King. And we will next probably see this Colress's Experiment come down. Already has switching cards in hand, plenty of Pokemon. Just a few more pieces needed for an excellent start here for King. Let's see what these 5 cards can grant.
Yeah, the Ditto is really interesting right here because it allows you to adapt to whatever you find off of this Colress. You know, if you find enough cards to set up for a Cramorant attack right away, you can just go get that with the Ditto. If you need to dig a little bit more, need to get a little more set up, that can easily become a Comfey. So a pretty cool tech inclusion in this deck. Something we don't see too often. We might see it a little bit more post-rotation with Buddy Poffin being able to grab out the Ditto, and then Ditto can transform into something like, say, a Giratina V or a Chien-Pao EX. That's something we've seen a little bit of over in Japan. So a little surprised to see it early on here in this format, but it is still a really unique and solid card.
We'll see Comfey put into the Lost Zone. Flower selecting, and this is a tough choice.
Nest Ball and the Forest Sealstone being offered up.
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty surprised to see that Comfey hit the Lost Zone there for King on that first turn. I really didn't have the Pokemon necessary to get another Flower Selecting into play and use this Ditto to attack for the turn. So we are just going to see the Forest Sealstone, that key resource allowing King to use a V-Star power later on in the game.
Yep.
Just going to put that to the Lost Zone, grab the Nest Ball, and now with this hand, it looks like King will be able to get off a Cramorant attack if he so chooses to. We'll still have access to one more Flower Selecting. So not playing this Nest Ball shows me that King's just going to look through this card, see what it is, and then if it's not a Cramorant, just going to play the Nest Ball and grab that most likely.
Yeah, losing the Forest Sealstone, not too bad. There are 2 copies of the card in this list. This is a little tough, though. An Escape Rope and a Super Rod being offered up from this Flower Selecting. Both cards you would really like to have. Super Rod much more powerful as the game goes on, a key recovery option. But Escape Rope can allow you to be really aggressive in the early game, and King does choose to take that. We'll see the Nest Ball. Have to imagine this is going for the Cramorant.
Yeah, start looks great. There is no Radiant Greninja just down quite yet. Of course, it's not a great attacking threat with that Manaphy in play. Nothing like canceling Cologne on King's side to really deal with that. So Cramorant comes down. We will see that Spit innocently on turn 1, taking the knockout on Ralts. And as Gardevoir, these are honestly some of your hardest turns as these first couple of turns. Can you set up? Can you stabilize?
Yep.
Otherwise, Cramorant spits all over your board, just kind of runs away with it, and it does what he so chooses to.
There is the Pal Pad in King's hand. It looks like they were debating playing it for just a moment. Going to hold off for now. It can be really strong to put back a pair of Colress's Experiment or save it for later when you're going to be using Pokestop. You know, Pokestop, maybe you discard something that you would like to have, and then you can use Pal Pad to bring it back. But King is able to strike first with that Cramorant. Spit innocently takes down the Ralts.
Action back on Cyrus. Lots of choices. Starting things out with that Avery. And no Pokemon get discarded because the bench is smaller than 3 Pokemon. But we do see an Ultra Ball, and this would be an excellent opportunity to use that Mirage Step attack. Can put away some of these cards that are not needed from the hand. That Mew really not getting a lot of value anymore because, of course, only having 60 HP, even with Jirachi in play, it kind of just holds a bench spot, doesn't get you as much value as, let's say, a refined Kirlia does. And there it is. Mirage Step, Kirlia, staple card into this Gardevoir deck. It's crazy to think that sometimes these decks didn't actually play something like the Mirage Step back from when we first saw this deck take off with the release of Paldea Evolved. But here it is now. putting these 3 Curlia into play, textbook start here for Cyrus, exactly what she wants on the second turn of the game.
Yeah, and has a pretty strong follow-up in the hand already. There is a counter catcher, and there is a Professor's Research. So plenty of options based on whatever King decides to do with his board. It's going to kick back over to him. Now, did he take the Iron Hands off the prize cards?
No, he did not. It was just another Mirage Gate, and this hand is just super awkward. A lot of key cards towards the end of the game, but nothing that can really be used. A few Mirage Gates, counter catcher, energy cards, and this is why it's important to maybe get Raiding Crew Ninja down on these early turns, because that energy really doesn't do much in this hand. I mean, maybe I think putting it onto a Comfey is not terrible. You give yourself at least a pivot for next turn to dig a little bit deeper.
Yeah, it's not great here for King, but you're at least going to get one more prize card, and you kind of try to think about what the prize map may look like. 2 prizes from this Cramorant, knocking out a Ralts last turn, Curlia this turn. If you can pull off the Iron Hands at some point, that's 2 more prize cards. And then you just have to find 2 more prizes somewhere along the way. That's really not too hard to try to piece together. You've got powerful attacking Pokemon like the Dragonite that can swing for a bunch of damage. Something like Sableye can clean it up. Now, Cyrus does have the answers, has the Jirachi, also is actually playing 2 copies of the Moonlit Hill, something you don't see too often. And King here taking that prize card, it was indeed Iron Hands EX.
So action back on Cyrus. Do see a Professor's Research in the hand. Does have some key pieces, though, like that Boss's Orders, like that counter catcher. And as a Gardevoir player for months, this is sort of the back and forth I have with playing Research in this deck. Yes, having Dig through your deck is excellent in so many matchups and just universally against no matter what you play against. But with a deck that likes to build its hand up and draw lots of cards, you sometimes get into a spot where the resources that you have to discard with something like that Professor's Research are just too vital. And I feel like if Cyrus was going to really want to play that card, it would have just been before using these Refine abilities.
Yeah, for sure. So this definitely means Cyrus wants to hang on to this hand, doesn't want to discard the Boss's Orders. Having to use a counter catcher this turn and then discard the Boss's Orders from the Research means you only have 1 Gust option left for the rest of the game.
And it will just be the counter catcher up on this Comfey. That is sort of one of the disadvantages. Your opponent's going to want to target it anyway. That is just 1 more resource hitting the discard pile, plus Iono. But, I mean, you're going down to 4 cards. I don't think King is too upset about that, so to say. There wasn't really a Colress's Experiment in the hand. A lot of other key resources, though, for later on.
Yeah, it's going to depend what King is able to find here. He is going to be losing a Comfey this turn, almost definitely. Cyrus, I think, just about has everything. I think needs to find an attacker, I guess. There is the Gardevoir EX in the hand currently, and that is a good find as well, using Level Ball to get the Jirachi. Definitely a key card for this matchup, able to protect your bench Pokemon from being hit by the ever-powerful Sableye.
And this is just completely textbook here for Cyrus. Exactly what you want. You want space for your Curlias to attack. You want to evolve these up into Shining Arcana. And the whole key here with setting this board up is keeping your Shining Arcanas as healthy as possible. 120 damage is really that magic number for the Lost Zone deck. And this hand looks super excellent off these refines. Rare Candy plus Gardevoir EX in the hand.
And that last card found just now off Refinement was Shining Arcana Gardevoir. Cyrus, that was the one thing that they were missing, was an attacker, but was luckily off this last Refinement, able to find it, uses that Shining Arcana. And like you were saying, Ethan, this hand is shaping up extremely nicely.
I think Cyrus is doing pretty much everything perfectly at this point. Has energies in the discard pile. You don't quite need to put Jirachi into play. Now, there is a world where your opponent uses 2 flower selecting abilities, plays Colress and Lost Vacuums, and then can fire off a Lost My attack. And this is what I was talking about. Keeping these Gardevoirs healthy is such a key ability in this matchup, and Moonlit Hill is a card that is perfect for that. You can use these Psychic Embrace abilities, put damage on all of your Psychic Pokemon, and then use Moonlit Hill, discard a Psychic Energy, and now this Shining Arcana Gardevoir is not being threatened by a lot. Cannot be knocked out by a Cramorant, cannot be knocked out by Sableye, and can also not be knocked out by Iron Hands EX. An excellent turn 3 here for Cyrus, taking the knockout. And King is just left with a Comfey and a Cramorant in play, and only 4 cards in hand to start this turn off.
Yeah, a Comfey, a Cramorant, and maybe a Prayer here off this flower selecting. Really needs to find something. Colress would be great. And there is a Colress found. It is going to come at the cost of having to lose a Forest Sealstone. That last copy of the card in King's list, but I mean, it's got to be worth it. I mean, I guess something King could do would be to Lost Zone the Colress and then use Forest Sealstone to go get another Colress out of the deck because there was a Nest Ball in hand, but yeah, skipping the step here, just go for this Colress and let's see what we find.
Only advantage to that would being to have a lost vacuum target.
Right,
but, I
exactly.
mean, that's like so minimal to get another great piece out of your deck.
Yeah,
Another
it
tough
lets you get to
decision.
10 a little quicker, but yeah, that is a little less important whenever Jirachi is on your opponent's bench. I do really quick want to touch on something really smart that Cyrus did last turn. Before using the Moonlit Hill, put one extra energy card into play on this Gardevoir EX. Of course, the Moonlit Hill does heal damage from all of your Pokemon in play, not even just the Psychic Pokemon, but for this deck, that's all that's relevant. Being able to remove that extra 2 damage counters from that Gardevoir makes it to be a more viable attacker later on in the game. Gardevoir EX has a lot of HP, and it can be a really strong option, but when you Psychic Embrace too many energy cards onto it, it gets put into range of something like Dragonite EX or Dragonite V, excuse me, being able to come in and take the KO. So by using the Moonlit Hill, in order to get that healing off on that Gardevoir EX, it is going to be a viable attacker later on in this game.
As you can see, this matchup is all about numbers, playing around the meticulous math that Lost Zone can deal out every turn, whether it's through big attacks, small, quick bursts of damage through Cramorant and Sableye. You've got to cover a lot of your bases as King finally gets this Radiant Greninja into play, so concealed cards online, providing a little bit more consistency at the cost of getting rid of some of these energy cards from the hand. But my main question here is, yeah, getting Greninja down is great. You get to cycle through the deck a little bit more, draw cards, but if you're not following up these turns with knockout after knockout and putting on pressure, you could see this 2-card prize lead start to slowly evaporate as Cyrus claws back into this game.
Yeah, I think King would really like to find an escape rope here, potentially. Just hitting this active Gardevoir with the Cramorant does not feel great. Having to 2-hit KO a 1-prize Pokemon makes me feel like we're playing with some theme decks out here. This is supposed to be the highest level of competition, but it's all King can go for. Just that spit innocently, and we'll see what Cyrus has to respond.
You see Level Ball just get discarded, so no Pokemon to find out of the deck. There is another Psychic Energy in hand. This is the question. How do you really put your energies into play? Now, this is one of the sort of disadvantages of not playing Roaring Moon in your Lost Box deck, is you don't really have a consistent way to deal with knocking out Gardevoir EX. Dragonite caps out at 250 damage. You'll still see the manual attachment onto that Gardevoir. I'm not quite sure the extra 20 damage saved off of the healing is super relevant, but you now also have a consistent pivoter, so no matter what you want to go into, you're not going to put damage on it to any of your Pokemon. Followed up by Iono. Still plenty of cards left for Cyrus to draw. Hasn't taken any prize card, or has taken 1 prize card, so hopefully we'll get that updated. We did see Comfey go down the last turn, so drawing 5 cards off of this Iono, plus the Shining Arcana, and there is the energy hit. So now this Gardevoir EX on the bench can potentially attack, and
yeah, could it even be the attacker right now this turn? Deny the prize cards from King.
And not only denying the prize cards, but keeping Shining Arcana in play allows you to consistently use that ability and provide a bit more consistency and stabilization to your deck.
Now, one thing Cyrus is probably thinking through is, what do I need to play around? It's a little daunting when you're sitting down across from a Lost Zone toolbox deck, because your opponent really could have just quite a number of things that are really bad for you at any given time. Is there the Roaring Moon in King's list, like you mentioned, right? It's not in the deck. We know that. The viewers at home now know that, but Cyrus is not sure, so they're going to have to think around everything, and it is going to be Counter Catcher bringing up this Comfey, and I really like this play. It's not getting rid of the main attacking threat. Of course, King will be able to attack with Cramorant as many turns in a row as he would like, but by dealing with these Comfeys now, we know there's now 2 in the discard pile. We see 1 in the Lost Zone right here. Cyrus is setting up for a future situation where she'll be able to go 4 in Iono, leave King with just a few cards, and 0 Comfeys to draw through the deck.
Yeah, I think it is a little bit of an interesting debate to either go after the Radiant Greninja or the Comfey, but as you said, the piece is there. Disrupt the consistency, claw back in the end of the game. That's what Gardevoir is so great at doing, having one of the best comebacks in the format, the best end game options. You can blow things up with your big attacks, you can spread damage all over, snipe things, lots of great effects and versatility in your attackers. So here we go. It's pretty much all onto this Comfey at this point. 1 flower selecting, nothing else really going on in this hand. And if there's nothing else here, you'll just see 3 straight turns of Cyrus taking prize cards without giving any up, putting herself in a dominant position in this game 1.
Yeah, and you can see why Gardevoir is known as such a comeback deck. King was able to jump out to an early lead, going up 2 prizes taken to 0 from Cyrus, and Cyrus has immediately tied that situation up. And while Qing will take a prize card here, benches the Iron Hands as well, gets an energy card on it. You know, Cyrus is definitely in a solid spot, and with that Iron Hands being benched, could we potentially see that become a target this turn for Cyrus to jump ahead and take 2 prize cards?
So this will be interesting here. Now, I believe that Qing is only at 3 prize cards.
I think
correct?
so, yeah. Yeah,
so
should still have 3 prize cards remaining.
So Qing at 3 prize cards. Cyrus, 4 prizes still. Now, what will we see at this point? We do see Super Rod get down into play. So we'll shuffle 3 of these Pokemon back in. It will just be that 1-1-1 line of the Curlia, as Fog Crystal will be the choice, putting this Ralts into play, and this is exactly what Cyrus wants to do from this point. Stabilize the board, just consistently. Every time an Arcana Gardevoir gets knocked out or a Gardevoir gets knocked out, you put a Ralts in play and you try and build another one up while keeping Jirachi and Manaphy on your bench to keep your bench Pokemon safe from attacks. And this Gardevoir EX is honestly a pretty fine attacker. I feel like that and the Shining Arcana, they provide the same purpose, right? They take knockouts and they don't get knocked out back.
Yep.
Now, it is a little bit harder to make sure that your Shining Arcana doesn't get knocked out because that's just sort of how it plays out. It's
especially when your opponent
HP.
has an Iron Hands EX on the bench, right?
So it really comes down to Moonlit Hill. And I mean, Qing has still not found a counter stadium for that. So if Cyrus continues to draw into Psychic Energy cards, can use 2 Psychic Embraces and the Stadium to mean that a single attachment the following turn will put you out of range from Iron Hands. And that's really where the advantage of playing multiple copies of the Stadium card comes into play.
Now, Cyrus does have the Ultra Ball, which of course can find that Gardevoir as the attacker here. And I am curious to see which route Cyrus will go. Will it be the Gardevoir EX attack this turn, or will it be that Shining Arcana? I think at least getting Shining Arcana Gardevoir into play is good. You know, get a little bit more card draw. Seems pretty solid. But to me, it does seem like, I mean, I'll defer to you a little bit here on this one, Ethan. You're definitely the more experienced Gardevoir player here. This feels like a pretty decent turn to attack with Guardi EX to me.
Yeah, I think it's fine to use Gardevoir at this point.
Maybe not anymore, though. If you can heal this out of range of the Iron Hands, which I think might be what is happening here. Oh, it doesn't even have to with the Reversal Energy being live.
Yeah, so it was a really interesting choice there to discard the Psychic Energy, because ideally what you want to do here in this position is play Counter Catcher, bring up the Iron Hands, and then heal it out of range so that you only put 10 damage on. And now Cyrus did have a Psychic Energy in hand, could use Psychic Embrace 2 times, and then use the ability. So this is an interesting choice. I feel like you kind of are okay to go after Iron Hands because you take the lead, and then it's a little bit harder for your opponent to come back.
What this play might be doing is Cyrus trying to ensure that the second Reversal Energy will be live, most likely on the next turn. You know, if you assume this Gardevoir gets KO'd, you take the 1 prize card here, you tie it up, your opponent jumps ahead. You know, they can't realistically take an easy knockout with the Iron Hands X this turn, so give yourself the chance to just get ahead in the prize trade, deny the easy knockout from the Iron Hands, and go from there. And then even if they do knock out the Gardevoir with something like more powerful, maybe Dragonite, something along those lines, then you will have access to your Reversal Energy.
Yeah, I think both plays here are fine. I think Cyrus, regardless, is in an excellent spot in this game. 2 knockouts away, and Qing is going to, at minimum, have to take 3 turns to take these last 2 prize cards.
All right, hold on now. We do see a Super Odd and double Mirage Gate in the hand, so we could see Qing at least attack. An Arm Press would have KO'd the Gardevoir, but Qing doesn't think that will be a winning play, decides to concede, and Cyrus takes the win in Game 1.
Yeah, not much Qing could really have done in that game. I feel like variance is one thing we talk a little bit about with this Lost Box deck. On paper, can do so many different things, can string together a bunch of different attackers, put on a lot of pressure, but when it's not able to get those pieces, when it's not able to put those combos together, you see hitting for 110 damage with a 1 prize Pokemon every turn, it's not a winning strategy.
Yeah, it's pretty good early, but whenever you're hitting for 110 and that's not leading to a prize card, that's where things get a little bit out of reach, a little tough.
Well, Cramorant was in the spotlight this game, whether it wanted to or not. All lights were on Cramorant. Spin innocently, not quite enough, and Moonlit Hill putting in a lot of work on that first game, healing these Gardevoirs out of play. We saw the Cramorant just not able to take the knockout, capitalizing on that, having essentially a bonus turn for Cyrus. Really needed that, and that's sort of the trade-off. You give up those first 2 early prize cards, turn 1 Spit innocently, followed up by Mirage Step getting knocked out by Cramorant, and And then you just create this dominant board. I mean, look at this board chip. You have a Pokemon that puts as many energies as you want into play, things that draw you 6 cards every turn, and then bench protection from all of your Pokemon. What more could you want than that?
Yeah, a pretty excellent spot to be in. It really felt like Cyrus was in a winning position pretty much from the start. Even after Qing got those 2 early knockouts, it felt like Cyrus was just way more set up and had a lot more going for them. Now we are seeing the prize cards go out. Qing does prize that one, Sableye, and over on Cyrus's end, a pair of Moonlit Hill, one of the 2 copies of Rare Candy in her list, and a Kirlia as well. A little annoying. 3 energy though for Qing and 2 Comfey. These players having a contest here to see who can prize the worst cards, it seems like.
And this is tough for Qing. There is nothing going on in this hand. Raikou, a bunch of energy cards, and a Colress that cannot be played. You need to get these flower selectings off early on in this game. Is Qing really considering benching this Raikou to maybe fleet-footed and draw a card?
It might be what Qing is considering, and it might be the only real play. Raikou, not a great attacker in this matchup, mostly in this deck to be able to take easy KOs on things like Pidgeot EX against Charizard. But it has to be that fleet-footed to try to get a little bit deeper. Finds a counter catcher, and then now we'll pass it over to Cyrus.
And look at that, has Battle VIP pass again. I'm sure Qing feels like, hey, can I have borrowed that on the first turn? Could I maybe have used that to get some Pokemon into play? It will be Battle VIP pass, the choice already. Cyrus will check through the deck. Did start that Screamtail. Now, Screamtail is not a terrible starter because if anything is going to be knocked out, you'd rather have it be that Pokemon than something like Ralt, so to say. So it's okay having that Pokemon into play early on. Just checking through the deck. We'll get the bad news that Kirlia is in play. That refinement is prized. Now, I do wonder here in this position that this is sort of where you could consider to maybe not go for the Mirage Step angle and just put some Kirlias into play. It is a little bit harder to Mirage Step, especially if you have if your opponent has a slower start. The Screamtail may not be knocked out at the end of the following turn, and if that's the case, you're going to need to have an attachment this turn and the following turn, as well as having that Mirage Step Kirlia to get off that Mirage Step attack.
Yeah, I did see an energy in Cyrus's hand, and I also did see the Mirage Step. So I think going for that, or at least leaving the play open, seems pretty good. And that's what you see pretty consistently from the best players in the game, is that they leave plenty of paths open. They don't lock themselves down into one single line unless they absolutely have to. And so Cyrus will probably leave plenty of routes potentially open. Mirage Step will be one of those options next turn.
Just checking through the deck very thoroughly. You want to know what cards are available, what cards are not. Even checking things like the Gusting cards, the Counter Catcher, Boss's Orders, all of those pieces, for the time being, are available in the deck. So we'll just see a single... I was about to say, I think the question here is, Cyrus may have a Fog Crystal in hand, so you want to make sure you're getting the right type of Pokemon off of cards like Battle VIP Pass. So grabbing the Manaphy and then grabbing this basic Psychic Pokemon will most certainly be that Ralts.
Yep. Does get that second Ralts down. Honestly, Cyrus could have probably pretty comfortably played from a board with just the one Ralts if she absolutely had to, but, you know, getting 2 in play does leave one option open to be able to be rare candied out.
Question here for Cyrus. Your opponent didn't do much. There is an Iono in the hand. Honestly, you could just attach here to either the active or the bench, and I actually really like this play. Hitting with the slap for 30 damage, and what this actually does is it sets this Raikou up, if it's not healed by a switch card, into a knockout from the Gardevoir EX to deal 190 damage into it. Well, I like the smart play here from Cyrus, thinking maybe a little bit ahead, just putting some damage on the board.
Yeah. I mean, you got to attach somewhere so you can retreat and Mirage Step next turn if your opponent doesn't get the knockout. So might as well get a little bit of damage in. And like you mentioned, it definitely could be something that is relevant. Qing was able to find a Battle VIP pass, but it's no longer the first turn. So just a little too late. Not something he would have liked to have seen now. And this Colress's Experiment left Qing with 5 pretty tough cards to choose between.
Does grab the 2 Comfey in the deck. 2 of them are prized, so does find those. And I mean, that's a pretty big find when
that's good, yeah.
Your Battle VIP passes are no longer available to grab Pokemon. And a very good 2 cards off that Concealed Cards ability. Switch card can allow this Raikou to not only retreat out of the active, but heal some of that damage. And well, we talked about the pros of using Slap this turn. We didn't talk about the cons, and now it is that if this gets knocked out by something like a a Cramorant Spit Innocently, or something like Escape Rope is played. Now Cyrus will have to find another energy card. Instead, if this energy was put onto a Ralts, it was pretty much free to attack if Cramorant came in.
I mean, if this Ralts gets KO'd, Cyrus can just promote Ralts, right? So that's not too big of a deal.
It's still the energy card is the idea.
Well, I mean, yeah, you need energy on it regardless this turn, right? So we'll see exactly how things play out. King did choose to use the Escape Rope before using Switch Card. I probably would have liked to see Switch Card go first. That way you can get rid of the 30 damage on this Raikou so that that's not a potential 2-prize easy KO target for Cyrus later on. Pretty much regardless of what you do, that's going to be a 2-prize target at some point in the game. But we'll see how things develop here. King now getting up to 4 in the Lost Zone. I believe has the 4 Seal Stone, so we could see a Cramorant take a KO here. It doesn't even need it. Actually has Nest Ball and Switch Card in the hand.
Yeah, definitely not sure if it's worth burning that resource. Nest Ball comes into play. So Cramorant can come down onto the battlefield, take a knockout onto this Ralts, but it feels like deja vu from game 1. I mean, Cyrus is eyeing up to get another Mirage Step out the next turn. Cramorant will take a knockout on turn 2, rather. So Cyrus did sort of get an extra turn to potentially play a supporter card and attack, but took pretty much neither of those major options. We saw the slap from the Screamtail, but that was pretty much it. So Cramorant will be the selection, it looks like, off of this Nest Ball. And it's really going to come down to these next couple of turns for King. They were very mediocre to poor in game number 1. They need to be a lot better. We need to see some big sparks fly, Iron Hands EX, maybe Dragonite coming down and putting pressure onto play. Even Raikou to take knockouts onto these Shining Arcanas. As long as the prizes are taken every turn, this is still a very winnable matchup here for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think this is shaping up okay for King. It's not perfect. Obviously, that Raikou being in play right now is less than ideal, but still plenty of time. It's a long game, and anything can happen in the Pokemon TCG. And I like the fact here that, as opposed to game 1, King is going to take this knockout, and it will leave Cyrus with just 1 Ralts in play. And let's not forget, Cyrus did prize a Kirlia, so that is going to lead to just 2 Kirlias being put into play next turn. Spit Innocently over the course of the next 2 turns will take 2 prize cards. Cyrus's board is just going to naturally be a bit weaker than it was in game 1 due to the prize cards.
So the choice here is, do you manual retreat this Comfey out of the active, or play something like this Switch card?
Yeah, I like using the Switch card here. Save the energy to use concealed cards on the next turn, or just prep yourself to be able to retreat if your opponent Ionos you. That's also something that can be pretty nice. Good to just get a few energy prepped into play for King, and that's exactly what we see here.
Spit Innocently taking the knockout. Screamtail is promoted. You see Kirlia and an Iono.
And this is where you hold your breath as a Gardevoir player. You've prized a Kirlia. You've got your Mirage Step in play. Cyrus needs an energy. That'll be pretty easy to find. It should be, knock on wood. You just got to cross your fingers that you don't draw into any of your Kirlias here. There's the energy. And no Kirlias drawn. A sigh of relief from Cyrus Davis.
Even finds that Radiant Greninja. That can sort of take up a slot that Refinement Kirlia would provide, sort of to draw you some cards. And I sort of get this discussion sometimes. Do you concealed cards before you use Kirlia?
Yeah.
I personally would just use the Mirage Step, because I think it is a huge deal here if you find a Kirlia. Only getting one into play shifts the whole dynamic of this game.
Yeah, I think if the Screamtail was maybe a Ralts, Cyrus would probably go for the Greninja in this spot, but with a Kirlia being prized, it's just a little too risky to go for it. So I think in this position, it totally makes sense. Hold off on benching the Greninja. And then also, you don't have to bench it here. King, you've kind of gotten a feel for what King's deck looks like as Cyrus. You don't assume that there's any Ionos, so you can always bench the Greninja next turn.
Switch card off the top. It's actually a pretty big deal here for King. Didn't really have a way to draw any more cards without relying off of using this Forest Seal Stone, a valuable resource you want to have available for as long as possible. We will see the flower selecting. Does find an Escape Rope.
And an energy card.
And this is sort of the interesting debate here. I mean, I feel like playing Escape Rope is honestly worse than just attacking this Kirlia, because Screamtail almost 100% is going to come into the active if you play that card.
You definitely would rather KO the Kirlia here than get rid of the Screamtail. It does stink to not get any value out of that escape rope, but the energy you can discard with the concealed cards, you can draw a couple cards, and that energy can come back into the deck at some point in the game through the use of Super Rod. So it's not a resource that's gone forever like something that goes to the Lost Zone in that escape rope.
Now, Qing is actually in a really interesting spot. Has only used one flower selecting and is up to 5 cards in the Lost Zone. If Qing can use both of these flower selectings, play Colress's Experiment, and then play a Lost Vacuum and get Sableye established, we could see a Lost Mine knock out one of these Refinement Curlias, shutting off Cyrus's consistency to set this board up. And it will be that Forest Seal Stone used, and Colress's Experiment will be the card of choice grabbed. However, I think we may have actually seen the Sableye in the prize cards here for this game.
Sableye is prized, yeah.
So that will not be an option.
It is still possible because there is, the Hisuian Heavy Ball is in the Lost Zone as well. So, yep.
Yeah.
Like you said, that would be a pretty decent situation. It would still require Qing to get a little bit off of this Colress right here. Needs to find a Psychic Energy, but in this instance, not even possible because that Sableye is in the prize card. Still solid here to go for this Colress, and you're at least going to still get a prize card here with the Cramorant.
It's a bit of a trade-off. Honestly, sometimes it's better and just, if you're going to attack with Cram, why play more cards? Especially if you know you're going to get Iono'd most likely the following turn, you at least guarantee yourself to have Colress. So it is sort of a little bit of a trade-off. I mean, if you find something like Palpad, it's definitely worth, but it's hard.
Now, this is an interesting choice. Qing has found the Kyogre off of this Colress's Experiment. And when you're playing the Kyogre deck, you want to keep it as an option for as long as possible most often, but sometimes you need to recognize the situation and say, I'm not going to use Kyogre this game. I just need to get rid of this piece. And I really don't like this decision. Qing is going to choose to lose a Colress over the Kyogre. I think it's really difficult for Kyogre to come in and have an impact in this game. Cyrus has the Manaphy in play, and even if that Manaphy is dealt with at some point, I just don't know. I think it's pretty tough. Now, Qing did get to 10 cards in the Lost Zone, but we know Sableye is not an option.
Hold on, this hand is actually looking super solid. There's double Mirage Gate and Iron Hands in this hand. However, there's lots of energy cards in the discard pile. So we're going to check off this nest ball and see what resources are available.
I don't see an energy card. Yep.
Never mind. Not an option at all.
Yeah, that would have been really nice. Qing could have pulled off the Iron Hands here, jumped really far ahead in this game, but is going to come up just a little short, something that can absolutely happen with these Lost Zone decks.
Yeah, and what looked to be a pretty explosive turn 3 for Qing. Playing this Escape Rope as well instead of the Switch card, and you are more than happy to give this Screamtail up. You're going to want to evolve into Gardevoir EX anyways this turn if you don't find Reversal Energy, and you're more than happy to evolve a Curlia that doesn't have Refinement to do that. And you could see with this Lost Zone deck, sometimes just these small micro decisions can shift out and really change the dynamic of this matchup.
Yep, Cramorant will take the KO, and now that is 2 prize cards for Qing. Cyrus sending up this Curlia. We'll see what kind of board can be established here. There is that Greninja in hand, like you mentioned, and it will come into play. We'll probably see things kick off with the concealed cards.
2 cards, taking a look. Does find that counter catcher, it looks like. Has that Gardevoir EX, and this is a position where having the energy on the Curlia means you can potentially attack, and because that Raikou was not healed, we could even see something like the counter catcher target after this, and this is where you've got a lot of decisions as this Gardevoir deck. You've got to plan ahead and figure out how you're going to play this game out.
Yeah, debating what to discard here off this other Refinement. It's going to be a Super Odd. That is how you know your opponent has a really good hand if you're sitting there as Qing. If your opponent is discarding a Super Odd, their hand is pretty strong.
There's the attachment for turn to this Gardevoir.
Now, will Cyrus go for the counter catcher KO on the Raikou, or will we see Cyrus do something similar to what we saw in the first game and take out the draw engine, take out those Comfeys? And it looks like it is going to be the chase of the prize cards here in this position.
Yeah, evening things out is really good, and this Gardevoir can just totally tank a hit for the time being. You can take 110 damage, and eventually, with Moonlit Hill, you can even slowly heal the damage off of this Gardevoir and negate an entire turn.
It's a lot of basic energy to be discarding from your hand.
Especially when you get rid of something like Super Odd. It can definitely be tough.
But it is an option, and like we were saying earlier, that's what we see from the best players most often, is just leaving themselves with plenty of options as the game continues to progress.
And an Iono as well to follow this up. That's going to take Yu King's large hand, put it onto the bottom of the deck, and only grant him 4 cards, taking the knockout with Miracle Force, evening things up.
And that goes back to that turn where Yu King could have used Switch Cart, could have healed 30 damage off of that Raikou, given it back up to that 200 HP mark, so Miracle Force would not have been able to get the KO, but Cyrus able to capitalize on that early slap from the Scream Tail and takes the KO.
And this is just a tough spot for Yu King. Has Pal Pad, but I think is maybe trying to potentially play Boss's Orders this turn. A nice, easy flower selecting there, though, does find the final copy of the Chorus's Experiment available.
Yeah, Boss seems pretty decent here, being able to actually take a prize card and going after the Manaphy. When your opponent just discarded a Super Rod, you know, you're giving yourself the option to potentially go for a Radiant Greninja in the future turns. This could be a path, honestly, for Yu King to find a way back into this game.
Sort of the debate, right? Do you bank off your opponent not having the ability to put this back into play, or do you target after these Kirlias? The main consistency, depending on how you think you can come back into this game.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like this line, to be honest. Yu King's probably not in a great spot regardless, so you kind of have to hope that your opponent makes a little bit of, or has a little bit of a misstep, getting re-established, getting reset up, whatever. You could target the draw engine, but if you target this Manaphy and Cyrus doesn't get a Shining Arcana potentially onto one of those Kirlias, you open yourself up to being able to take out 2 next turn. And worst case scenario, you're assuming you'll be able to get 1 Kirlia and that Jirachi as KOs in a future turn.
So there it is, Spit Innocently. Manaphy goes down. Gardevoir EX comes up. We are tied almost at prize cards. 4 prizes for Cyrus will almost guaranteed tie things back up. We are getting into the end game here, Chip. Now, one thing to note, Reversal Energy is online this turn. And both of those Kirlias are still not evolved yet into Shining Arcana. We know both are still in the deck, still available. And Cyrus really prioritizing having access to those. Decided to keep something like Ultra Ball over that Super Rod to try and grant a little bit easier access to drawing into those at this point in the game.
Yeah, we see the Fog Crystal being used, got that energy, concealed cards, finds that research. Probably not going to be seeing that be played.
Second ability used to draw some more cards. It is that Refinement this time. Both Moonlit Hill are still in the prize cards, so no real plays to heal things off. But even just attacking with something like Shining Arcana and a Reversal Energy is a fine play this turn, or even just attacking with Gardevoir EX is also fine. You're really not being threatened by too much. I think it's important to at least get one of these evolved into play, and the big thing that is unavailable, though, is that Manaphy in the discard pile. So only having 1 Super Rod left, we're going to see these Kirlias start to get evolved into Gardevoir, doing as much as possible to dig through the deck to find that remaining copy of Super Rod.
Will we see something like an Iono from Cyrus? Another question. There is one in the hand currently. That is one of the things Gardevoir can do to really make this matchup feel super solid, is just spam Iono turn after turn. Lost Box loves to build up a large hand to be able to play out of. You know, Yu King has the Iron Hands. That's a really resource-intensive attacker. You have to use 2 Mirage Gate, sometimes 3 if you want to attack with that thing, in order to get a retreat option pulled in. And we actually are going to see the counter catcher, Cyrus, maybe doing this as response to the Manaphy going down, trying to make it difficult for Yu King to use this as an attacker. Yu King is now going to need a lot if he wants to pull that off, needing to find Super Rod and a way to get Greninja back into play.
Yeah, this is honestly an interesting choice to retreat the Gardevoir this turn. I really feel like he didn't necessarily need to do that. It's not being threatened, but still just going to put a Pokemon into play as a 1 prizer, saying, look, if you have a way to knock out a Pokemon in play, I'd rather you take this 1 prizer out of the play. Use that Reversal Energy while you can. And we will just see immediately the Super Rod, and this is the key turn for Yu King to get back into this game. If Yu King can put this Greninja back into play, use Mirage Gate, and power up a Moonlight Shuriken, he can knock out both of these Pokemon on the bench, or even target after the Jirachi, put himself down to 1 prize card.
Yeah, and I kind of like the play of getting rid of the Jirachi so that you, if you take Disable off the prizes, you know, if you take 2 prizes, you know, that's a decent shot to happen. You open up the possibility of just winning with a Lost Mine. Now, there is one problem. Going to one single prize card can be risky because you're going to get Iona to one almost definitely, and Lost Zone Toolbox does not like playing the game with a one-card hand.
Do see the Colress's Experiment in hand, and these are going to be a big 5 cards, flower selecting everything Qing needs to get back into this game.
Mirage Gate, Comfey.
Does find Super Rod as well, so Super Rod, Mirage Gate, 2 good cards, and hey, you've got to get rid of the Kyogre now, right?
Yeah.
Surely can't really make that happen. It's really just unlikely to pull that off, especially if you're going to commit these resources to a Moonlight Shuriken this turn. But, I mean, actually, these are not bad cards. If this Comfey can find something like... see, but it's tough because there's no switching card in this hand. You've got the energy attachment for turn, you've got the Mirage Gate to power it up, and the Super Rod to put the energies back in the deck, but there's no Greninja and there's no switch cards. So no matter what this flower selecting finds, it's not going to be enough to get that Moonlight Shuriken this turn.
Yeah, it looks like things may come up just a little short. I don't know if using multiple Comfey here really gets you anywhere as well. You just need multiple cards. Debating what to get rid of. It is going to be the Comfey and the energy still hanging on to that Kyogre.
Look, Kyogre can be your partner Pokemon. Maybe Train, I'm going with you till the end here, buddy. Sticking around, not throwing him away into the Lost Zone. A pretty easy choice here again. We'll get rid of that Battle VIP pass. Boss's Orders kept into the hand. And this is again where Cramorant just does not get a lot of value when it hits into something like the Shining Arcana. Now, the Shining Arcana here is really interesting, and the reason I'm sort of a little bit hesitant about using the Reversal Energy this turn on it is because if your opponent doesn't take a knockout, you're going to go even on prize cards, and Reversal is no longer active, so you're going to have to put more damage onto this Gardevoir if you are going to want to retreat it out of the active spot rather than having a Gardevoir EX. It sort of works both ways, though, because if the Gardevoir gets hit, then it's got to also retreat out of the active. So.
Yeah, and if it gets hit, your opponent's not taking a prize card, which is also one of the big things here.
It's sort of an offset trade. I think it works out even, regardless of how you play it through. So this seems fine at this point. We are going to now see the Mirage Gate being used to just put some energies into play on this Comfey. I mean, look, nobody said using flower selecting is bad, but flower selecting isn't the name of the game here, Chip. You've got to deal some damage. You've got to swing the prize trade back into your favor, and you've got to have these resources available for later on, especially if you ever want to use Iron Hands EX, you've got to use 2 Mirage Gate with it.
Yeah, Mirage Gate is one of the most powerful cards in the entire deck, an item card that can attach 2 energy cards from your deck. And Qing, this set has just been forced to use that as an option to retreat. Really not a great use of resources, but it's really, you know, things have just not quite fallen into place perfectly for Qing, and has had some difficult decisions, and we will see that spit innocently. Deal 110.
And not out of the game quite just yet. Still has some options available, but every turn you're not taking prize cards, and Gardevoir is always taking knockouts with how this deck is built. You're falling slower and slower behind. And finally, it looks like Cyrus did take one of those Moonlit Hill off the prize cards, and this is where Moonlit Hill shines. This is a perfect masterclass in how to use it. Pokemon already damaged, and you can use Psychic Embrace to power up something like maybe this Kirlia on the bench and then attack with another Pokemon that can't be knocked out. You can play this dancing game when you have something like Jirachi in play to prevent your opponent from taking multiple prize cards with Sableye. Excellent position here for Cyrus.
Yeah, has plenty of options here. Can build up a second Gardevoir. Could attack with the Gardevoir EX as well. Cyrus here is going to play around the potential of like a Roxanne, I think, from Qing. We didn't see it last turn, but anytime you're under 3 prize cards, Roxanne has become a pretty popular tech choice in a lot of these Lost Zone decks. So playing that level ball just to get nothing, just to get it out of the deck so that it's not something that she'll draw into if a Roxanne is played.
Comes Shining Arcana. Does not find any Psychic Energy, but just playing these cards, getting them out of the hand. Now, I'm not sure if there's better options to maybe discard with something like Refinement. That is one thing you've always got to be careful of. You never want to not have resources to pitch away, but it is that trade-off, right? You don't want to draw into them, but sometimes you want to draw into something not great that you want to get rid of. So next up is that Moonlit Hill. Now, not using any more Psychic Embrace abilities before using this Moonlit Hill. I feel like you could have at least capitalized a little bit better to maybe put some more energies into play. May not matter in this position.
Interesting,
though.
yeah. Cyrus might not know exactly which Pokemon she wants to attack with right here. Is going to go for maybe something like the Iono first. Wanted to make sure that Moonlit Hill could be capitalized upon before the Iono was played, so that could be the reason for the sequence here.
Yeah, I mean, could have just peeled damage off. It's not like it's super relevant. Jirachi, again, is protecting your Pokemon for being knocked out, but sometimes every damage counter matters. Psychic Energy for Turnet is active. Now, that Reversal Energy is only providing a colorless energy, but with 2 Psychic Energies, 120 damage will knock out this Cramorant. And then another Iono getting played. King's hand shuffled onto the bottom of the deck, drawing only 3 cards. And this bench is just Comfey City, only Comfey's in play. Cyrus will go down to 2 prize cards, re-establishing the lead in this game number 2. As time is winding down here, Chip, we've only got 1 minute and 24 seconds left. King's hopes of pulling out, continuing at this 4-0 record undefeated, it's getting more slim and more slim.
Cyrus did find another Shining Arcana Gardevoir. We will just see the Psychic Embrace place the extra 20 damage onto this Gardevoir. Brainwave swinging for 120 here, able to take out the Cramorant. Cyrus jumps ahead in the prize trade for the first time in this game. King is going to need some help. We pretty much need to find exactly Colress off of this flower, selecting. Crossing the fingers here. Does have a Nest Ball, could be played first, and I think that is going to be the move. I think a Colress was put onto the bottom of the deck from the Iono, so make sure you use that Nest Ball, shuffle the deck, so you give yourself a higher chance to find a Colress here.
Yeah, I think that the only way that King stays in this game is it would need to be a Cramorant knockout onto this Gardevoir, and then you have to find some way to take 2 prize cards next turn with Iron Hands, but with the resources that are still available, I'm not sure that that's possible. You need to draw into the perfect combination of cards, probably across 2 turns, and Cyrus has a massive hand. She's going to most likely find Iono and disrupt it.
Going to come down to this flower selecting. King needing to find Colress to stay in it, and I do not see a Colress.
Yeah, this hand has got nothing going on. You can retreat and use 1 more flower selecting ability, but how many switch cards are still even available? Does prioritize grabbing the counter catcher off of this flower selecting, putting Dragonite V into the Lost Zone. Every attacker
Colress?
you put away.
Nope.
It's boss's orders. It's
another switch card.
You got to go down the rabbit hole, right?
Yeah.
You got to keep going down, keep continuing to flower selecting, but
keep the hopes alive.
Yeah, you got to.
Is this a situation where you double check, count your opponent's resources, see if you could win by, dragging up Greninja and then next turn dragging up Jirachi? I imagine Cyrus has played around the potential of that happening as much as possible, but sometimes you got to try to find those niche win conditions. If Cyrus has too many energy in play or too many in the discard pile, we know that a Super Rod was discarded earlier. I mean, King could play to the out of, cross my fingers, Cyrus has that last Super Rod in the prize cards, and maybe a Greninja or Jirachi sticks.
And this is just a tough choice here for King. What do you do? Do you use 1 more flower selecting? Do you try and stall this active up? And you see his expression. He's just like, what do I do here? How am I ever winning this game?
Colress?
1 more flower selecting, and it's a heartbreaking 2 cards. Mirage Gate
That's probably gonna be
the
it.
Super Rod. And
probably needed both of those cards to have a chance to win the game, and King agrees. Concedes, says, I can't win, and Cyrus Davis gets a pretty convincing 2-0 victory with Gardevoir.
Excellent way to start off this regional championship. 4-0, not too shabby at all, and doing it with a powerful deck. I'm biased a little bit, but hey, it's just because the deck is strong. Look, we've had a lot of really questionable games of Gardevoir on stream, people saying, why is this deck good? Why is everybody playing it? That right here was a great example of how Gardevoir can shine when it sets up, when it stabilizes, when it gets everything going. It is a powerhouse and a monster of a deck to deal with.
Yeah, congrats to Cyrus on the great start. And King as well, 3-1, still a very solid start. Looks like he's got a pretty solid Kyogre deck cooked up for the weekend, so we'll see if he can get back into it going into round number 5.
Yeah, this game 1 was all Cyrus. Put on absolute aggression after taking off those 2 prize cards. Brainwave after Brainwave, sustaining the hits thanks to that new Moonlit Hill Stadium card. Very welcomed inclusion into this Gardevoir deck.
Yeah, I don't think we've seen very many Gardevoir lists have more than 1 copy of Moonlit Hill, at least here in America. I know you played for a while over in Japan, and people were kind of playing some of those heavy Moonlit Hill lists. You yourself, I believe, played a 2 Moonlit Hill list to a Champions League.
Yeah.
But yeah, Cyrus here showing that double Moonlit Hill just provides you with so many options, especially in this specific Lost Zone box matchup.
Yeah, you'd think Jirachi is enough to protect against Sableye, but you can do both. You can protect the Pokemon in the active and your Pokemon on the bench. And and it is an excellent combination to have in game two. Just a slow start from Qing in combination to just not having a great access to attacking threats just meant that Cyrus could do exactly what she did in game one. Establish the board, get attackers put into play, and make sure they're out of range from that Cramorant.
Yep.
Put the prize trade back in the favor. And sometimes small things like putting 30 damage on a Pokemon with a small attack like Slap can come and do huge dividends when you clean up later on in the game. Cyrus going to 4-0. Very convincing games. I mean, that's what you'd expect from our national champion, from our NAIC champion, and an esteemed, strong player in the Pokemon TCG.
Yep, Cyrus has had a pretty great 12 months here in the Pokemon TCG and looking to continue having a great run in her home country of Canada. It is on the opposite coast, you know, Cyrus, East Coaster, traveling all the way over here to Vancouver, but still trying to represent the home country.
Listen, this is Canada's 2 regionals that they get throughout the year, and it's awesome to see the Canadian crowd come out. We sometimes forget about NA, including both North America with Canada and Mexico included into there.
It's been pretty hard to forget that this year, though, because the
Yeah.
Canadians have been tearing up the circuit. I mean, Raymond Long and Andrew Estrada getting the first 2 regional wins, and the Canadian players, honestly, have continued to dominate, taking up many top 8 spots at a lot of regional championships.
It is just Canada, right? U.S. and Canada is
That's
the
right,
region. That's correct. So
yeah, Mexico
clarification
is
on there.
included in Latin America
That's true.
for our rating purposes.
Make sure we get everything technical and correct, and Canada's been having a dominant season. Now, they may not be in as big a volume as players, of course. Majority of our regional championships are happening at North American events, rather in the U.S., all over the East Coast, Midwest, West Coast. But listen, these Canadian players, they come down in waves, these strong players, and they're here to show that they can win these events. And maybe you see a Canadian world champion. We haven't seen a Canadian win the world championship since Andrew Estrada in 2014. So, hey, listen, maybe the 10th anniversary of a Canadian winning. That's a nice number to follow it up with another Canadian world champion.
Yeah, and Andrew, of course, did win that first regional championships this year, locked up a spot right away to the world championships. And to be honest, I don't know that I've seen him play too much since that first regionals win. He locked up the invite and was like, yeah, maybe I'll take it easy, and have to imagine once we know kind of the full details of the world championship, he'll be going hard and trying to become just the second player ever to win 2 world championships.
Yeah, Jason Klaczynski, the only person on that list. Really, just a lot of these players. I mean, we've seen stories through World Championships. We've seen old players win. We've seen new faces win. Right? Vance Kelly, the star player to break out of last year's